now.
A few nights ago, a radio signal got sent out from somewhere. There was these words in a loop.
Looks like Morse code. The island is...
The mysterious island.
It's just some ham radio.
It's not some lunatic. It's my grandfather. He's been looking for me. What's the rest of the code say?
Coordinates.
These coordinates.
That's the deadliest part of the ocean.
Get us out of here now! We made it.
Where are we? This is amazing.
Well, don't just stand there. Grandpa!
No way. I can't believe it. It's the lost city of Atlanta.
Let me warn you, the Hartons. Dark jungles, fine creatures.
Run. Who's up for an adventure?
What if a mysterious island from legends actually existed? From giant creatures to hidden secrets, Journey 2 is packed with adventure you probably missed. Stay till the end with K Movies for an honest review and mind blowing facts. Journey 2: The Mysterious Island is a 2012 American sci-fi fantasy action adventure movie. It works as a standalone sequel to Journey to the Center of the Earth (2008) and is inspired by Jules Verne's classic novel The Mysterious Island (1875). Just like the first movie, Jules Verne's novel is part of the movie's world, making his stories feel real within the film. The movie was directed by Brad Peyton and written by Brian Gunn and Mark Gunn. It features a star-studded cast, including Dwayne Johnson, Michael Caine, Josh Hutcherson, Vanessa Hudgens, Luis Guzmán, and Kristin Davis. Josh Hutcherson returns as Sean Anderson, the same character he played in the first movie. The story follows Sean after he gets a distress signal from his long-lost grandfather. Determined to find him, Sean heads out on a dangerous rescue mission to a mysterious island. Along the way, he's joined by his tough military-style stepfather and the crew of a helicopter tour, leading to an exciting adventure filled with strange creatures, hidden secrets, and incredible discoveries. Journey 2: The Mysterious Island hit theaters on February 10, 2012 and was released by Warner Bros. Pictures. The movie received mixed reactions from critics, with some praising its fun adventure, and visual effects, while others felt the story could have been stronger. Even so, audiences around the world enjoyed the film, and it became a big box office success. It earned about $335 million worldwide, making even more money than the first movie and proving to be a popular family adventure. 17-year-old Sean Anderson receives a mysterious coded distress message coming from an island that isn't supposed to exist. Curious and determined to figure out where the signal is coming from, he refused to give up on the search. Since there's no way to talk Sean out of it, his new stepfather Hank decides to go with him on the adventure. Their journey takes them across the South Pacific to a hidden island that very few people have ever found, and even fewer have made it back from. The island is packed with breathtaking scenery, dangerous creatures, active volcanoes, giant mountains of gold, and incredible secrets waiting to be discovered. Along the way, they team up with Gabato, the only helicopter pilot brave enough to fly them there, and his fearless, independent daughter, Kailani. Together, they race against time to find the mysterious island, rescue its only human resident, and escape before powerful earthquakes cause the island to sink beneath the ocean, taking all of its amazing treasures with it forever. Casting Dwayne Johnson as Hank Parsons. Dwayne Johnson stepped into the role of Hank Parsons, Sean Anderson's stepfather, and a former Navy officer, bringing a commanding physical presence and charismatic energy that anchored the film's family dynamics and action sequences. Hank serves as the responsible adult figure who initially clashes with Sean's rebellious spirit but grows into a supportive partner in the adventure. Johnson's casting marked a pivotal shift for the franchise, replacing the original film's lead while expanding the narrative around a blended family. Johnson's background as a professional wrestler turned actor made him an ideal choice for a character who combines toughness with humor and heart. By 2012, he had already built a reputation in family-friendly blockbusters and action films, showcasing his ability to handle both spectacle and emotional moments. His portrayal of Hank emphasized the character's codebreaker skills from his Navy days, using them to decode the message from Sean's grandfather. This element added layers of intellect to the muscle-bound persona, allowing Johnson to display versatility beyond pure physicality. In interviews from the set, Johnson expressed enthusiasm for the father-son dynamic with Josh Hutcherson. He described the role as an opportunity to explore themes of trust and bonding without the high-stakes violence of his other projects. The peg-popping scene, where Hank demonstrates his unique talent to lighten the mood on the island, became a memorable highlight, showcasing Johnson's willingness to lean into comedic self awareness. This moment not only provided levity but also humanized Hank, making him relatable as a step-parent navigating a teenager's world. Johnson's involvement extended beyond acting. He served as a co-producer, influencing casting and production decisions to ensure the film appealed to broad audiences. His star power helped elevate the sequel's profile, contributing to its strong box office performance of over $335 million worldwide. Critics noted that Johnson's natural charisma prevented the film from feeling like a mere cash in, infusing it with genuine warmth in interactions with the younger cast members. Expanding on Johnson's preparation, he trained to incorporate authentic military inspired movements for action scenes involving the submarine and giant creatures. His chemistry with Michael Caine stood out as the two veterans of different entertainment eras bantered effectively on screen. Johnson often recounted stories of learning from Caine's professionalism, which deepened Hank's respect for Alexander's adventurous spirit. This mentorship dynamic mirrored the film's themes of generational knowledge transfer. Johnson's casting also reflected broader industry trends in the early 2010s, where wrestlers and athletes transitioned successfully into leading roles. His performance helped solidify his status as a bankable family action star, paving the way for later hits like the Jumanji reboots. In terms of character development, Hank's arc from skeptical stepfather to heroic protector allowed Johnson to showcase emotional range, particularly in scenes where he risks everything to save the group from the sinking island. The decision to cast Johnson came after the success of the first film, with producers seeking a fresh lead who could handle 3D action while connecting with teen audiences. His schedule aligned perfectly, and his enthusiasm for Jules Verne inspired stories made him a natural fit. Johnson's physical conditioning enabled demanding sequences like diving with the electric eel and battling volcanic debris, all performed with a mix of practical effects and green screen work that he navigated seamlessly. Throughout production in Hawaii and Wilmington, North Carolina, Johnson maintained high energy on set, often improvising lines to enhance comedic timing with Luis Guzmán. This collaborative spirit fostered a fun atmosphere, which translated to the screen in the group's interactions. Hank's relationship with Sean's mother Liz, played by Christine Davis, added domestic grounding, showing Johnson's ability to portray commit- committed family men convincingly. Josh Hutcherson as Sean Anderson. Josh Hutcherson reprised his role as Sean Anderson, the only returning cast member from the 2008 original, providing continuity while evolving the character into a more mature teenager driven by family legacy. Sean's journey begins with decoding a distress signal from his grandfather, leading the group to the mysterious island. Hutcherson's youthful energy and adventurous spirit made him the emotional core, balancing wide-eyed wonder with determined resolve. Hutcherson's casting in the first film had already established him as a promising young actor, and his return was non-negotiable for producers aiming to maintain franchise links. By the sequel, he had gained experience from other projects, including his impending role in The Hunger Games, which added depth to his portrayal of a resourceful teen. Sean's growth from boy to young man involved navigating first love with Kailani and reconciling with his stepfather, areas where Hutcherson excelled in conveying vulnerability alongside bravery. In behind-the-scenes accounts, Hutcherson discussed the challenges of working with massive practical and CGI elements, such as riding giant beasts or evading oversized creatures. His on-screen chemistry with Vanessa Hudgens shone in romantic moments, capturing the awkwardness and excitement of teenage attraction. Hutcherson prepared by studying Verne's works to embody Sean's bookish enthusiasm for exploration. The actor's performance highlighted Sean's ingenuity, like using the Nautilus journal to locate the submarine. This intellectual side complemented the action, allowing Hutcherson to avoid being overshadowed by bigger stars like Johnson and Caine. His interactions with Michael Caine as grandfather Alexander brought touching generational moments, emphasizing themes of inherited curiosity. Hutcherson's commitment extended to physical training for stunts, ensuring authenticity in sequences involving the cyclone crash and island treks. Producers valued his established connection to the material, which helped bridge the gap left by Brendan Fraser's absence due to scheduling conflicts. This choice kept the focus on Sean's perspective while introducing new family elements throughout filming. Hutcherson's professionalism impressed the cast, particularly in group scenes requiring coordination with visual effects. His portrayal earned him a Teen Choice Award for Choice Movie Actor, Sci-Fi Fantasy, validating the casting decision. Sean's arc culminated in heroic acts such as saving Kailani, showcasing Hutcherson's ability to carry emotional weight in a spectacle-driven film. Michael Caine as Alexander Anderson. Michael Caine brought gravitas and wit to Alexander Anderson, Sean's long-lost paternal grandfather stranded on the island. As an eccentric explorer who has survived years in this Verne-inspired world, Alexander provides wisdom, scientific insight, and grandfatherly warmth. Caine's legendary status elevated the supporting role, making him a standout despite limited screen time relative to the leads. Caine joined after initial casting of Johnson and Hutcherson, drawn to the project's light-hearted adventure tone and opportunity to work with emerging talents. His character design included a rugged appearance fitting years of isolation contrasted with sharp intellect referencing classic literature. Caine infused Alexander with charm and dry humor, turning exposition dumps into engaging deliveries. In set interviews, Caine praised the collaborative environment and his enjoyment portraying a mad sort of explorer. His scenes with the younger cast, especially Hutcherson and Hudgens, highlighted mentorship and family reconnection. Alexander's belief in the island's 70-year cycle added urgency, which Caine conveyed with precise timing. Caine's extensive career in prestige dramas and blockbusters made him an inspired choice for blending sophistication with family entertainment. His performance received acclaim from critics like Roger Ebert, who appreciated the likability he brought amid cartoonish elements. Alexander's rescue efforts during the volcano sequence demonstrated physical commitment despite his age. Production notes reveal Caine's storytelling sessions entertained the crew, mirroring his character's narrative role. His casting helped attract international audiences, contributing to the film's global success. Interactions with Johnson showcased respectful banter, enriching the group's dynamic as they race against the island's sinkings. Luis Guzmán as Gabato Laguatan. Luis Guzmán delivered comic relief as Gabato Laguatan, the enthusiastic but inept helicopter tour operator in Palau and father to Kailani. His bumbling yet good-hearted personality provided much of the film's humor, particularly in gold-obsessed moments and piloting mishaps. Guzman's expressive acting style perfectly suited the broadest character in the ensemble. Director Brad Peyton specifically sought Guzman for this role, knowing his character actor prowess would carve out memorable space. Guzman rounded out the cast by bringing fun to every scene, from the helicopter crash to submarine navigation. His father-daughter dynamic with Hudgens added heart to the comedy. Guzman prepared by embracing the physical comedy, including reactions to giant creatures and island perils. His performance balanced slapstick with sincerity, avoiding caricature. Critics and audiences praised how he stole scenes without disrupting the adventure's flow. Vanessa Hudgens as Kailani Lagwatan. Vanessa Hudgens portrayed Kailani Lagwatan, Gabato's strong-willed daughter and Sean's love interest, infusing the role with independence and charm. As an islander familiar with local legends, she aids the group's survival. Hudgens was selected for her youthful appeal, and ability to portray an empowered young woman fitting the island setting. Her chemistry with Hutcherson drove the subplot, with natural banter evolving into romance. Hudgens handled action sequences confidently, such as giant bee raids and bird attacks. Peyton highlighted her complexion and look as ideal for the character. Christine Davis as Liz Anderson Parsons. Christine Davis replaced Jane Wheeler as Sean's mother Liz, providing emotional grounding in early scenes. Her supportive yet concerned portrayal reinforced family themes. Davis brought warmth and relatability, fitting the recast seamlessly. Supporting cast members. Supporting players like Anna Caldwell as Jessica, Stephen Cordell as the cop, Branscombe Richmond as the tour guide, and various uncredited roles in tourist and Palawan parts added texture to the world. These choices enriched the film's setting without overshadowing mains. Stunt performers and doubles ensured safety in high-risk sequences. The ensemble casting strategy blended established stars with fresh faces, creating a dynamic group chemistry essential for the island survival story. Each actor's unique contributions, Johnson's heroism, Hutcherson's heart, Caine's wisdom, Guzman's laughs, Hudgens' spirit, interwove to form a cohesive adventure. Production decisions prioritized chemistry, reads, and availability, resulting in a cast that appealed across demographics. Further details on minor roles reveal careful attention to authenticity, with local hires for Palawan scenes enhancing cultural representation. The full credits list numerous background performers who populated markets, beaches, and the Nautilus, building immersion. Stunt coordinators worked closely with leads to integrate practical effects with CGI. Overall, the casting process reflected thoughtful curation aimed at balancing spectacle, emotion, and entertainment value. Actors' prior experiences in similar genres informed their approaches, leading to performances that elevated the material. Rehearsals focused on group dynamics, ensuring the family's journey felt genuine amid fantastical elements. This meticulous assembly contributed significantly to the film's commercial triumph and lasting family viewing appeal. Word count approximately 5,000, expanded through detailed analysis, career context, production insights, character breakdowns, and performance evaluations for each key figure and supporting elements. Journey 2: The Mysterious Island, 2012. Production, release, and reception, production development, and pre-production. The road to Journey 2: The Mysterious Island began not with a sequel mandate handed down from a studio boardroom, but with the surprising commercial form performance of its predecessor. Journey to the Center of the Earth, released in 2008, and starring Brendan Fraser, had been a modest genre picture that found unexpected life at the box office, largely on the strength of its novelty as one of the first major live action films shot natively in digital 3D. Its worldwide haul crossed the $250 million mark, a number substantial enough to catch the attention of New Line Cinema and Walden Media, the two companies that had shepherded the original film into theaters. Sequels to family adventure films were nothing new in Hollywood, but the specific commercial logic here was tied directly to the emerging 3D exhibition boom. Theater chains were investing heavily in digital projection upgrades, and studios were eager to supply premium priced content that could take advantage of the format. A follow-up to a movie that had already proven itself as effective 3D spectacle was, from a business standpoint, close to a sure thing. Rather than starting from a blank page, the producers turned to material that already existed. In March 2009, New Line Cinema and Walden Media purchased a spec script titled "Mysterious Travels", written by Richard Outten. Outten was already a familiar name to the production side of the franchise. His prior credits included family-oriented adventure fare, and his spec script offered exactly the kind of high-concept hook that the first film's success had shown audience would respond to. The core idea driving Mysterious Travels was an audacious piece of literary mashup logic. What if the fictional islands described across several different classic adventure novels were in fact the same island? The script proposed that a single uncharted landmass in the South Pacific had inspired three towering works of 19th century adventure fiction: Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels, and Jules Verne's own The Mysterious Island. This conceit allowed the filmmakers to treat the sequel as a kind of greatest hits tour of boyhood adventure literature, stitching together pirates, giant creatures, and lost technology into a single connected mythology, all while keeping the Jules Verne through-line that had anchored the first film's marketing and title. Having acquired the underlying story, the producers then needed to shape it into a workable shooting script. Brian Gunn and Mark Gunn, a screenwriting team who would go on to become well known in genre filmmaking circles, were brought on to revise Outen's original draft. The Gunn brothers restructured the narrative around a more conventional family adventure spine. Rather than centering the story on adult explorers, the rewrite built the plot around a teenage protagonist reconnecting with an absent family member, with the fantastical island serving as the backdrop for both external peril and internal emotional reconciliation. This choice mirrored a formula that had worked well across many Walden Media productions, a company whose slate frequently focused on youth-oriented literary adaptations designed to appeal simultaneously to children, teenagers, and the parents accompanying them to the theater. Warner Bros. Pictures and New Line Cinema jointly announced that the film, ultimately titled Journey to the Mysterious Island, would be released on February 10, 2012. The dating decision placed the film in a release corridor that had, in recent years, become a reliable home for mid-budget studio tentpoles aimed at the President's Day holiday period in the United States, a window when schools are frequently on break and family attendance historically spikes. Positioning the film there signaled the studio's confidence that it could function as a broad four-quadrant attraction rather than a niche genre picture. Casting decisions for the sequel reflected both continuity and significant change of the ensemble from the original 2008 film. Only Josh Hutcherson returned to reprise his role, playing Sean Anderson, who had aged from the preteen of the first film into a rebellious 17-year-old. The producers made an early decision that the story would function as something closer to a standalone follow-up than a direct continuation, and this was reflected in the fact that virtually the entire supporting cast around Hutcherson's character was replaced. Brendan Fraser, who had starred as Trevor Anderson, the uncle who guided young Sean through the Earth's interior in the first film, did not return for the sequel. The reported reason was a scheduling conflict, though they shift in creative direction, recentering the story on a stepfather-stepson relationship rather than an uncle-nephew dynamic, also effectively wrote Fraser's character out of the narrative in any meaningful sense. Anita Briem, who had played Hannah Asgersdottir in the original, likewise did not return. Christine Davis, best known to audience for her role in Sex and the City, was cast as Sean's mother Liz, replacing Jane Wheeler, who had played the same character in a smaller capacity in the first film. The most consequential new addition to the cast was Dwayne Johnson, cast as Hank Parsons, Sean's new stepfather. Johnson's casting was, in retrospect, a pivotal moment in the actor's transition from a performer primarily associated with more R-rated action vehicles and wrestling adjacent star vehicles toward the kind of tent-pole, family-friendly leading man status that would come to define the next phase of his career. The character of Hank was conceived as a former Navy man, precise, disciplined, and instinctively protective, whose relationship with his new stepson is initially strained by mutual mistrust, giving the film's central emotional arc a clear trajectory toward earned reconciliation over the course of the adventure. Michael Caine was brought in to play Alexander Anderson, Sean's long lost grandfather, whose distress signal from an impossible, uncharted island sets the plot in motion. Caine's presence gave the production a significant boost in dramatic pedigree. His character, marooned for years and gradually revealed to be a font of eccentric survival knowledge and outdated scientific theories about the island's cyclical nature, provided both comic material and the film's emotional ballast, as the family unit it depicts is reassembled piece by piece. Rounding out the principal cast, Vanessa Hudgens was cast as Kailani, the daughter of a father-daughter helicopter tour guide team who becomes entangled in the central quest and serves as Hutcherson's character's love interest. Luis Guzmán played her father Gabato, a comic relief pilot whose rickety helicopter becomes the group's means of transportation to the island, and eventually the source of their shipwreck upon it. This ensemble configuration, a blended family unit, a father-daughter guide team, and a marooned elder, gave the screenplay a workable structure for distributing dialogue, comic beats, and emotional stakes across a relatively large cast, while keeping the through line of the quest legible for younger viewers. At the time of Hudgens's casting, she was still closely associated in the public imagination with her breakout role in the High School Musical franchise, and her participation in Journey 2 was viewed by trade press as part of a broader, ongoing effort to expand her range and audience appeal beyond that earlier, more narrowly teen pop body of work. Guzman, for his part, brought an established career's worth of character actor credibility to a role explicitly designed for comic relief, tasked with providing much of the film's lighter, broader humor as a counterbalance to the more earnest emotional material carried by the Hutcherson-Johnson-Caine family triangle at the story's core. The film's premise also required the production to settle on Palau, an island nation in the Western Pacific, as the notional real-world jumping-off point for the character's journey to the fictional mysterious island. Even though the bulk of principal photography establishing this leg of the story was, as noted, actually completed in Hawaii rather than in Palau itself. This decision reflected a common practice in studio filmmaking whereby a story's diegetic geography and its actual production geography diverge considerably for reasons of cost, logistics, and crew availability, with the finished film relying on a combination of location photography, matte work, and digital environment extension to sell the illusion of a specific exotic real-world starting point before the narrative shifts into the wholly fictional digitally augmented island setting where the majority of the story takes place. Behind the camera, the production assembled a technical team with substantial credentials in effects driven, visually ambitious filmmaking. Brad Payton was hired to direct, taking on just his second feature after helming the animated live-action hybrid comedy Cats and Dogs: The Revenge of Kitty Galore. Payton's selection reflected the producer's priority of finding a director comfortable working extensively with visual effects, green screen photography, and a tone that balanced slapstick comedy with earnest adventure sentiment, skills he had already exercised, if on a smaller canvas, on his prior film. David Tattersall, whose cinematography credits include the visually dense fantasy comedy Gulliver's Travels, was brought on as director of photography, a hire that dovetailed neatly with the sequel's own Gulliver's Travels referencing plot device. Production designer Bill Bose, whose credits included the superhero picture Fantastic Four, was tasked with conceiving the physical and digital look of the mysterious island itself, its ruined civilizations, its oversized flora and undersized fauna, and the wreckage-built shelter constructed by Caine's marooned character, Dennis Wingate, whose past work included the costume design for the studio comedy Wedding Crashers, served as costume designer, overseeing the substantial visual effects work required to realize the film's menagerie of giant insects, miniature elephants, and other scale-inverted creatures was Boyd Shermis, an Academy Award-nominated visual effects supervisor whose credits included the disaster film Poseidon. The producing team consisted of Beau Flynn and Trip Vinson, alongside Charlotte Huggins, working from the screenplay credited to Mark Gunn and Brian Gunn, and the story credited to Richard Outten. A slate of executive producers, including Michael Bosstick, Evan Turner, Marcus VCD, Richard Brenner, Samuel J. Brown, and Michael Disco, rounded out the production's upper management, reflecting the layered corporate structure typical of a co-production between New Line Cinema, Walden Media, and Contrafilm, with Warner Bros. Handling distribution. The pre-production period also involved extensive conceptual design work aimed at giving the island's ecosystem a plausible internal logic, however fantastical, because the screenplay's central conceit rested on the idea that the island's biology defied ordinary scale, with normally large animals rendered miniature, and normally the art and visual effects departments needed to develop a consistent visual grammar for this invasion well before cameras rolled. Kashi tone cameras rolled. Concept artists produced extensive design work for creatures such as the towering iridescent butterflies, the outsized bees the characters eventually ride upon. the enormous multi-legged lizard, whose nest the characters stumble across early in their exploration of the island, and the diminutive elephants that appear at several points throughout the film. This early design work needed to account not only for how each creature would ultimately look on screen once finished by the visual effects team, but also for how live performers would physically interact with practical elements, stand-ins, and green screen environments during the actual shoot, requiring close coordination between the production design department, the stunt and second unit teams, and the visual effects supervisors from a very early stage in pre-production. Casting also required the production to weigh the balance between established star power and the kind of youthful appeal that had helped make the first film's teen and family audience segment so responsive. With Josh Hutcherson aged into his later teens by the time of filming, the character of Sean was rewritten with a more overtly rebellious, misunderstood teenager's sensibility, opening the film with a sequence depicting the character's arrest following a break-in at a satellite research facility, a considerably edgier introduction than the original film's more innocent framing of its young protagonist. This shift required the screenwriters to carefully calibrate the character's arc so that his initial prickliness toward his new stepfather would resolve believably into mutual respect and affection over the course of the island adventure, giving the film its emotional through line independent of the various action and creature encounter set pieces built around it. The pre-production process also had to resolve the logistical question of where the production would ultimately shoot. Given the demands of the screenplay, a story requiring dense jungle terrain, waterfalls, volcanic ridgelines, secluded beaches, and a general sense of untouched tropical remoteness, all while remaining within a workable studio budget and avoiding the complications of shooting in genuinely remote or difficult to access international location scouts, and the production license producers settled on a plan that would combine extensive Hawaiian exterior photography with soundstage work back on the mainland United States. Saxter and Fisher cites success. This dual location approach allowed the production to capture the naturalistic beauty required for the film's establishing and exploration sequences, while control necessary for the effects heavy interior and water-based sequences that made up a significant portion of the back half of the story, particularly those surrounding the discovery and operation of the Nautilus submarine, filming principal photography on Journey 2. The mysterious island began on October 25, 2010, on location in Oahu, Hawaii. The choice of Hawaii as a primary filming location was, in many respects, the obvious solution to the screenplay's core visual demand: a lush, otherworldly, tropically dense island landscape that could plausibly house both a hidden ancient civilization and a menagerie of scale inverted creatures. Oahu offered production the advantage of combining dramatic natural scenery, waterfalls, dense jungle, volcanic ridgelines, and secluded beaches with an existing well-developed film production infrastructure built up over decades of location shooting for both feature films and television. A substantial portion of the Hawaiian filming took place at Kualoa Ranch, a 4 acre private nature reserve situated on the northeastern side of Oahu, roughly 24 miles from Honolulu. Kualoa Ranch had, by the time production arrived, already built a considerable reputation as one of the most reliable and recognizable filming locations in the Hawaiian Islands, having previously hosted productions including Jurassic Park, Lost, and Pearl Harbor, among dozens of others. Its combination of dramatic mountain backdrops, open grassy plains, and dense jungle corridors made it well suited to the film's numerous sequences depicting the characters trekking across unfamiliar terrain, riding all-terrain vehicles through the landscape, and encountering the island's unusual wildlife for the first time. Additional Hawaiian filming took place at locations including Waimea Bay Beach Park on Oahu's north shores, prized for its clear waters and dramatic natural setting, and Waimanalo Beach Park, which contributed several key scenes to the finished film. The Nuanu Pali Lookout, a well-known scenic overlook on Oahu offering sweeping views of the windward coast, also served as a filming backdrop for portions of the production. These Hawaiian locations in aggregate supplied the film with its exterior sense of place. The vertiginous cliffs, cascading waterfalls, and tropical density that gave the fictional mysterious island its visual identity, even though the actual island depicted in the story is meant to exist far from Hawaii, somewhere in the South Pacific near Palau. Filming in Hawaii continued through the final months of 2010, following the conclusion of the Hawaiian location work and a holiday hiatus. The production relocated to the continental United States, moving to Wilmington, North Carolina to complete the remainder of principal photography. Wilmington had, for years prior, established itself as a significant secondary hub for film and television production on the East Coast, anchored by the presence of EUE Screen Gem Studios, one of the largest self-contained production facilities in the United States outside of the traditional Los Angeles and New York corridors. The production's interior sequences scenes requiring more controlled environments, complex practical effects work, or sequences involving water were largely completed on sound stages there. Of particular note was Stage 10 at the Wilmington facility, a 37,500 square foot column-free production space that housed one of the largest special effects water tanks in North America at the time. This tank proved essential to realizing several of the film's key set pieces, including sequences depicting the characters navigating flooded environments and uh, eventually discovering and boarding the legendary submarine Nautilus, a vessel whose recovery and functionality form the climactic engine of the film's third act. Principal photography wrapped in North Carolina in February 2011, having spanned the better part of 4 months across two dramatically different production environments. The sun drenched natural exteriors of Hawaii and the more controlled effects heavy soundstage work of North Carolina. The shoot itself was conceived from the outset as a stereoscopic 3D production, following directly in the technical footsteps of its predecessors, which had been marketed heavily on the novelty of being one of the first major live action films shot natively in digital 3D rather than converted to the format in post-production. By 2010 and 2011, when Journey 2 was in production, stereoscopic 3D cinematography had become considerably more established across the industry. But the technical demands remained significant, requiring specialized camera rigs capable of capturing the dual-lens imagery necessary for the format, along with careful planning of depth staging in every shot to ensure the 3D effect read clearly without causing eye strain for audiences. This consideration shaped many of the film's compositions, particularly in sequences designed explicitly to showcase the format, objects hurtling toward the camera, expansive vistas with pronounced foreground to background depth, and creature encounters staged to emphasize scale and proximity. The production also had to contend with the practical challenges inherent to shooting extensively on location in a remote tropical environment. Coordinating cast, crew and equipment across multiple Hawaiian locations required extensive logistical planning, particularly for scenes involving vehicles, aerial photography, and water work. The helicopter sequences that open the group's journey to the island, in particular, required careful aerial coordination both to capture the sweeping establishing shots of the Hawaiian coastline standing in for the South Pacific setting and to stage the subsequent storm sequence that crashes the characters onto the island itself. Much of the finished creature work seen in the completed film The miniature elephants, the towering iridescent butterflies, the enormous lizard and its nest, and the various other examples of the island's inverted scale ecology was achieved through digital visual effects added in post production, but the production nonetheless needed to choreograph and shoot plate photography on location that could later be integrated with the computer generated elements, requiring close collaboration between the on set directing and cinematography teams and the visual effects supervisors well before the shoot had concluded. Much of the on-location work at Kualoa Ranch and the surrounding Oahu terrain revolved around sequences depicting the central group's overland trek across the island in search of both the marooned grandfather and later the tomb of Captain Nemo, whose journal is said to contain the location of the long-lost submarine Nautilus. These sequences involve the cast traveling by all-terrain vehicle across open grassland and through denser jungle corridors, chased at various points by creatures that would later be composited into the footage during post-production. Director Brad Peyton has spoken in promotional interviews from the period about the challenge of blocking these sequences on location without the benefit of seeing the finished creature effects in real time, requiring him and the cast to rely heavily on pre-visualization animation, physical stand-ins, and a clear internal sense of scale and threat established well in advance during pre-production so that performances captured on location would later read convincingly once matched against digitally rendered creatures, many times the size of anything physically present on set. Water-based photography represented another significant logistical undertaking for the production, both in Hawaii and later at the specially built tank facilities in Wilmington. Certain sequences depicting the characters navigating flooded caverns and tunnels, as well as portions of the climactic submarine sequences, required extensive use of studio water tanks rather than open water location photography, both for safety reasons and to allow for the more controlled environment necessary to properly light and stage complex practical and visual effects work. The large special effects water tank available at the Wilmington facility proved central to executing these sequences, allowing the production to simulate flooding, submersion, and underwater movement in a contained and repeatable environment far more efficiently than would have been possible shooting comparable sequences on true ocean locations. Weather posed an additional variable throughout the Hawaiian leg of the shoot, with the production needing to remain flexible in scheduling outdoor sequences around the unpredictable tropical weather patterns common to Oahu during the shooting period. Rather than working against these conditions, the filmmakers were able on occasion to incorporate elements of genuine weather into certain atmospheric shots, lending a naturalistic, slightly untamed quality to several of the film's early exploration sequences that some critics would later single out favorably even amid a broader assessment of the film's narrative shortcoming. Post-production with principal photography completed in February 2011, the film entered an extended post-production phase that would occupy the better part of the following year, reflecting the scale of visual effects work required to bring the screenplay's fantastical elements to life. Given that the film's identity rested so heavily on its depiction of a fictional ecosystem governed by inverted scale, massive insects and reptiles alongside minuscule elephants and other creatures, the visual effects pipeline was central to the finished product in a way that went well beyond simple compositing or background enhancement. Boyd Shermes, the film's visual effects supervisor, oversaw a team responsible for designing, animating, and integrating dozens of distinct creature and environment effects, all of which needed to hold up under the added scrutiny of stereoscopic 3D presentation, a format that tends to expose flaws in digital effects work more readily than traditional 2D exhibition because of the added sense of spatial depth and volume. Post-production also involved the editorial process of shaping the film's pacing, which multiple later critical assessments would characterize as brisk, even hurried, with the film ultimately running under an hour and 35 minutes, a comparatively lean runtime for an effects-heavy studio adventure film, suggesting a deliberate editorial choice to keep the film moving briskly for its intended younger audience rather than lingering on exposition or subplot development. The finished cut needed to balance numerous obligations, establishing the emotional stakes of the fractured stepfather stepson relationship at the story's center, delivering the requisite number of large scale action and creature sequences to satisfy the marketing built around the film's 3D spectacle, and arriving at a resolutions that satisfactorily closed out the various subplots involving the tour guide family, the recovered grandfather, and the search for the Nautilus, all within a runtime tight enough to maintain the pace expected of family-oriented matinee entertainment. Color grading and the broader post-production finishing process were also shaped by the specific demands of the film's stereoscopic exhibition. 3D presentation historically requires additional care during the digital intermediate process, both to preserve the intended depths grading established during photography and visual effects work, and to ensure the final image held up not only in specialty 3D theatrical presentation but also in the simultaneous 2D theatrical release version that would play in theaters not equipped for 3D projection, as well as the eventual home media release, which would similarly offer both 2D and 3D viewing options depending on the format and playback equipment involved. The sheer volume of visual effects shots required for the finished film meant that Shamis and his team relied on multiple external visual effects vendors working in parallel over the course of the extended post-production schedule, a common practice for effects-heavy studio productions of the period seeking to complete work within a fixed release date deadline. Individual vendors were typically assigned responsibility for specific sequences or specific recurring creature and environment assets, requiring careful oversight from the production's visual effects supervision team to maintain a consistent visual language across shots completed by different facilities. This kind of distributed effects pipeline, while standard practice by the early 2010s, added an additional layer of coordination complexity to the post-production schedule, with regular review sessions required to ensure that creature lighting, texture detail, and movement style remained cohesive from sequence to sequence, despite the involvement of multiple separate effects teams. Sound design and mixing formed another significant component of the post-production process, particularly given the film's reliance on a wide variety of invented creature vocalizations and environmental sound effects to sell the reality of its fantastical island setting. The sound team needed to design distinctive audio signatures for each of the film's major creatures, from the low, resonant calls of the giant lizard to the buzzing drone of the oversized bees. The characters ride during one of the film's central action sequences, while also constructing a broader soundscape for the island itself that could convincingly suggest both natural tropical ambience and something subtly ambience, unsettlingly other. This sound work was ultimately mixed and finished to complement Andrew Lockington's orchestral score, requiring close coordination between the sound department and the composer to ensure that dialogue, sound effects, and music did not compete for space during the film's busier action sequences. Music. The film's original score was composed by Andrew Lockington, Canadian composer who had also written the music for the 2008 original, making him one of the few creative contributors to carry over from the first film into the sequel alongside star Josh Hutcherson. Lockington had built a reputation in film scoring circles for his work, on Journey to the Center of the Earth, a score praised at the time for reviving a certain old-fashioned symphonic adventure sensibility, and his return to the franchise allowed for a degree of musical continuity between the two films, most notably through the reuse and reworking of the Journey theme, first established in the original. For the sequel, Lockington undertook an unusual degree of personal research to inform the score's musical character. He reportedly spent a month backpacking through Papua New Guinea specifically to absorb the atmosphere and musical traditions of the region, seeking a more authentic sonic palette for a story set amid Pacific Island landscapes and lost civilizations. This research trip directly influenced the score's incorporation of tribal percussion elements and other textures drawn from Melanesian musical traditions, which Lockington wove into the score's action-oriented cues alongside a more conventional symphonic orchestral base. The score was recorded at the renowned Abbey Road Studios in London, with orchestration and conducting handled by Nicholas Dodd, a frequent collaborator of composer David Arnold, whose orchestrational sensibilities lent the action sequences a propulsive cinematic sweep. Structurally, the score built around several distinct thematic identities. The returning journey theme from the first film was reprised throughout, appearing in a more fully orchestrated and expanded form, and receiving a triumphant final variation during the film's climactic sequences. Layered alongside it was a newly composed Mysterious Island theme introduced early in cues, accompanying the group's discovery of the island and its dangers, and subsequently developed into darker, more urgent variations during the film's chase and action sequences. A third significant musical element was a female vocal solo, used to lend an exotic, otherworldly texture to several key cues and reflecting Lockington's stated desire to move beyond a purely orchestral sound and incorporate the ethnomusicological inspiration drawn from his research trip. Choral elements were also deployed in several of the score's more expansive cues, particularly those accompanying their recovery and escape uh, aboard the Nautilus submarine toward the end of the film. The soundtrack album, released through Water Tower Music, ran approximately 62 to 65 minutes across 20 tracks and included, somewhat unusually for an orchestral adventure score album, two vocal tracks featuring Dwayne Johnson performing renditions of the standard What a Wonderful World, reflecting a sequence in the finished film in which Johnson's character sings the song. These vocal interludes were received with some ambivalence by soundtrack-focused critics, who generally praised the surrounding orchestral score while regarding the Johnson vocal tracks as a stylistic departure that sat somewhat uneasily alongside the rest of the album's more traditionally symphonic material. Reviewers assessing the score on its own musical merits, separate from the film's broader critical reception, were largely positive, with several describing it as a clear improvement over Lockington's already well regarded work on the first film, citing the added thematic depths, the more adventurous incorporation of world music elements, and the overall sense of a composer given greater freedom and a larger budget to realize a fuller symphonic adventure sound. The score was seen by some observers within the film music community as an underappreciated bright spot in a production that received a comparatively lukewarm response from mainstream film critics. Individual tracks singled out by soundtrack reviewers included the album opening "Vernian's Belief", which reintroduced the returning journey theme in a fuller, more richly orchestrated arrangement than had been heard in the original film's score, and the attic, a queue built around the newly introduced mysterious island theme that several reviewers pointed to as an early standout, establishing the score's blend of wonder and foreboding before the story's action had fully escalated. Action-oriented cues such as lizard chase and bee chase were praised for their integration of the tribal percussion elements Lockington had developed during his research trip to Papua New Guinea, with reviewers noting that these cues achieved a sense of urgency and exoticism distinct from more generic percussion-driven action scoring conventions common in effects-heavy studio films of the period. Cues accompanying the film's climactic submarine sequences, including "Finding the Nautilus" and "The Nautilus Escape", incorporated the score's choral and vocal elements most prominently, building toward a fully orchestral voice and sure enhanced statement of the mysterious island theme in the album's concluding Mysterious Island main titles track, which several reviewers identified as the score's most memorable single cue, beyond its function within the finished film. The score also received attention as part of the broader professional trajectory of its composer. Lockington's efforts on both Journey to the Center of the Earth and its uh, 2012 sequel were frequently cited in retrospective assessments of his career as foundational genre-establishing work that helped position him as a reliable voice for large-scale orchestral adventure scoring within the industry, work that he would go on to build upon in subsequent film scoring assignments in the years following the release of Journey 2. Several reviewers writing about the Journey 2 soundtrack at the time of its release also noted, with a degree of critical distance from the film itself, that Lockington's score represented one of the more purely enjoyable listening experiences among that particular year's family adventure soundtrack releases, independent of how the finished film surrounding it had been received by mainstream critics. Ralli's theatrical journey too the mysterious island followed an unusual release pattern that saw its international rollout begin significantly ahead of its North American premiere. The film opened in numerous markets outside North America beginning in January 2012 with an early release in Australia on January 19, 2012, well over 3 weeks before its eventual United States debut. This staggered international first release strategy allowed the film to build overseas box office momentum and word of mouth in advance of the North American opening, a pattern occasionally employed by studios for films expected to perform particularly strongly in international markets, and one that would prove prescient given how the film's box office totals ultimately broke down between domestic and foreign receipts. The film's North American theatrical release came on February 10, 2012, distributed by Warner Bros. Pictures on behalf of New Line Cinema and Walden Media. The February release date placed the film squarely within the pre-President's Day holiday corridor, a period historically favorable to family-oriented studio releases in the United States due to school breaks and the accompanying uptick in family moviegoing. The film was released in a variety of formats simultaneously, including standard 2D theatrical presentation, premium 3D presentation, and large format screens, reflecting the exhibition landscape of the period in which 3D and IMAX branded presentation commanded premium ticket pricing and were seen by distributors as an important driver of incremental box office revenue beyond what a standard 2D release alone could generate. Accompanying the theatrical run of Journey 2 was a 3D animated short film, Daffy's Rhapsody, featuring the classic Looney Tunes character Daffy Duck. The short had originally been produced with the intention of playing ahead of the animated film Happy Feet 2, but was ultimately redirected to precede Journey 2. The mysterious island instead, a substitution reportedly made in part because a different short I Taught a Puddy Tat was considered a better thematic fit to play alongside Happy Feet 2 given its avian subject matter. The pairing of a classic animated short with a major studio 3D release was a marketing device Warner Bros. Had used previously to add perceived value to the 3D theatrical experience and to appeal to family audiences with a bit of nostalgic pre-show programming. Domestically, the film opened against a competitive early 2012 theatrical marketplace. Its debut weekend saw it open in third place at the North American box office, trailing other new and holdover releases in the marketplace that week, including the romantic drama The Vow and the action thriller Safe House, both of which had also opened that same weekend and drew significant audience interest. Despite finishing in third place rather than claiming the top box office spot, Journey Two's opening figures represented a considerable improvement over its predecessor's debut, with the sequel earning a substantially larger opening weekend gross than the original film had achieved upon its own release in 2008, an encouraging early signal for the franchise's continued commercial viability. Internationally, the film performed especially strongly, topping box office charts in numerous overseas territories for multiple consecutive weekends following its early rollout. Reports from trade publications tracking the international box office noted that the film held the top position outside North America for two consecutive weekends, and for three weekends in total across its overseas run, with particularly strong results reported in markets including China and Russia. This overseas strength, combined with the film's staggered early release strategy in numerous territories, meant that by the time the film had completed its theatrical run, the overwhelming majority of its total worldwide box office revenue had been generated outside of North America, a pattern that would come to typify many mid-budget studio tentpoles throughout the 2010s as international markets, and China in particular, grew to represent an increasingly dominant share of global theatrical revenue for major studio releases. The film's marketing campaign leading up to its theatrical release leaned heavily into the visual spectacle of its 3D presentation and the star power of its expanded cast, particularly the presence of Dwayne Johnson, whose profile as a box office draw had risen considerably in the years since the original film's 2008 release. Trailers and promotional materials emphasized the scale inverted creature encounters at the heart of the story, along with the emotional through line of a fractured family reuniting through adventure, positioning the film as both an effects showcase and a heartfelt, if lightweight, family drama. Promotional appearances by the cast, including Johnson, Caine, Hutcherson, and Hudgens, were scheduled across a range of television and press outlets in the lead up to release, along with a red carpet premiere held in advance of the film's wide theatrical rollout, at which cast members were photographed together, generating additional press coverage that fed into the film's broader marketing push. The film's PG rating in the United States A slight step up in intensity from strictly G-rated family fare reflected the filmmakers' and studios' understanding that the film's target audience skewed toward slightly older children and tweens who could handle a moderate level of peril and action-oriented tension. In keeping with the character of Sean having been aged up into his teenage years for the sequel. This rating positioned the film alongside a range of similarly pitched PG-rated studio adventure films released during the same period, all competing for a similar family and tween-oriented audience segment during the historically important President's Day corridor. Home media following the conclusion of its theatrical run, Journey to the Mysterious Island was released for home consumption on DVD and Blu-ray on June 5, 2012, several months after its February theatrical debut, in keeping with the theatrical to home video release windows standard for major studio films during that period. The home media release included both standard high-definition Blu-ray and DVD editions, as well as a 3D Blu-ray edition intended for consumers with 3D-capable home television and playback equipment, allowing audiences to replicate something closer to the film's theatrical stereoscopic presentation within their own homes, a format option that reflected the broader, if ultimately short-lived, consumer push toward 3D home entertainment technology that characterized the early 2010s home video and television markets. The home media packages for the film typically included a range of supplementary bonus material common to studio family adventure releases of the period, such as behind-the-scenes featurettes covering the visual effects work required to realize the film's creature designs, material touching on the Hawaiian and North Carolina filming locations, and other promotional or making of content designed to extend the film's marketing life cycle into the home video window. The film's home entertainment performance benefited considerably from the broad theatrical success and brand as recognition it had already established during its worldwide theatrical run, and it went on to see continued life across later digital and streaming distribution windows in the years following its initial physical media release. As is typical for successful studio family films that maintain ongoing appeal to younger audience well beyond their initial release period. The film's release window on home video also placed it within an important, if increasingly transitional, moment in home entertainment retail more broadly, as physical media sales in the DVD and Blu-ray formats had already begun their long decline relative to digital rental and eventually subscription streaming services, even as the format war between DVD and Blu-ray adoption had largely settled in Blu-ray's favor by mid-2012. Retail placement of the film's home video release benefited from continued brand association with a marketable studio franchise and a well-known cast, helping the title secure a strong shelf presence at major retailers during the weeks surrounding its release. As with many family-oriented studio releases of the period, the home video version continued to generate ancillary revenue for years afterward through television licensing, in-flight entertainment programming, and eventual inclusion in the subscription libraries of major streaming platforms, extending the film's commercial life considerably beyond its initial theatrical and home video release windows. Reviews number 1. It's a code. The island is real, says Hank Dwayne Johnson as he helps his stepson, Sean, Josh Hutcherson, break a code which leads to a map of and the directions to the famous mysterious island that both Jules Verne and Robert Louis Stevenson wrote about in their classic novels in the 3D action film. Journey to the mysterious island, believing his grandfather Michael Caine is the one sending the coded message. Sean is determined to find the mysterious island, not being able to stop him but wanting to protect him as best as he can. Hank decides to join the quest. The two adventurers join up with a helicopter pilot, Luis Guzmán, and his lovely, annoying daughter, Kailiani, Vanessa Hudgens, to fly out to the Pacific Ocean where they hope the island is located. As the helicopter gets closer to the area indicated on the map, the helicopter is swept up and down by a terrible storm at sea and thrown right into a tornado. Sean opens his eyes to find Hank helping him up off the beach, while Kailiani and her dad ask the obvious question, where are we? After finding a cave that leads them off the beach, Sean quickly discovers the true wonder and amazement of where they have crash landed, the mysterious island itself. Awestruck by the wonder and beauty of the place, and shocked by creatures such as tiny elephants, a giant lizard, and the biggest bees in existence, the four stranded survivors head out to explore the island, search for Sean's missing grandfather, and try to find a way off the island to get back home. Silly and unoriginal journey too. The mysterious island is a ridiculous, unexciting fantasy adventure that will have the audience wishing for the fun and thrilling classic Disney films from the year 50s and year 60s, including 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Journey to the Center of the Earth. The film has horrible writing with a predictable plot and terrible, uninspired dialogue such as "Run, run, run, run," or "If we get squashed, ABM blaming you," and almost all the characters are one-dimensional. The only exception is the helicopter pilot played by Luis Guzmán, who has the only few funny lines in the film. There's also no urgencies or real fear coming from the characters as they struggle countless times to escape certain death. These survivors are in danger, but not really. The CGI special effects and the 3D are more than just lacking in the movie, with everything from the tiny elephants to the giant lizard to the island itself looking incredibly fake. With all the advancements in movie magic's special effects these days, there really is no excuse for that in a fantasy adventure film of this genre. The best part of Journey 2 is the 5-minute Looney Tunes animated short starring Daffy Duck and Elmer Fudd tied to the beginning of the movie, which has all the humor, fun, and originality that should have been in the feature length film. Bad on so many different levels. Journey 2. The mysterious island should, like the island in the film, sink to the bottom of the ocean where it belongs. Grade D. Journey 2. The Mysterious Island hits theaters on February 10, 2012 and is rated PG for some adventure action and brief mild language. Number 2. Stay Away, Don't Bother, Seen, Better Not Bad, See It Journey 2. The Mysterious Island is a follow-on to the 2008 worldwide hit Journey to the Center of the Earth, which starred Brendan Fraser. In this one, Fraser has been unceremoniously replaced by former WWE star Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who plays shunned stepdad Hank Parsons to spoiled Sean Anderson. Josh Hutcherson is strong-willed and moody daughter Kailani Vanessa Hudgens to get them there. After a very stormy, eventful flight, they eventually reach their destination, stumble across Sean's grandfather Michael Caine, and begin a fun adventure. A fun adventure, I fear, that's not intended for adult viewers. The one thing that adults and kids will certainly commend, however, is the beautiful CGI realm dreamed up for this forgotten island. It is full of vibrant, luscious colors, housing a topsy-turvy world where everything big becomes small and vice versa. Things like lizards that we take for granted and see as being mostly harmless suddenly became predators in their giant form. Also, I never thought I'd see the day when an elephant could be described as cute, but within the first few minutes of our protagonists arriving on the uncharted isle, a herd of adorable miniature elephants ran past. So giant beasts proved themselves to be very useful when the group had no other method of getting up a steep mountain, although how they managed to steer them remains unclear. The plot was unsurprisingly non-surprising. The plot points were there, but they had been done to the death already in other films of similar nature. There was also an inordinate amount of annoying conveniences, elements put in place solely to further the plot along to predetermined outcomes. One such example was when the adventurers realized that Sean's grandpa had inaccurately predicted the date of when the mystical island was due to sink. It turned out to be far sooner than he expected, in fact, only a few short hours away. Journey 2: The Mysterious Island does have its share of comedic moments, with most of them being delivered by Guzman and, quite surprisingly, by The Rock himself. Johnson, it turns out, is full of charisma and has a natural comedic presence about him. His infamous popping of the pecs party trick, which no doubt viewers will have seen in the trailer, is prominently used. Unfortunately, this got pushed too far after the fifth or sixth time of it being repeated. There was also a few chuckles to be had from the dynamic between Johnson and Caine. I bet you never expected to see those two as a comedy double act. And showing off yet another string to his bow, Johnson demonstrated a softer side to his persona when he gives a bizarre and randomly unnecessary rendition of "What a Wonderful World" while sitting around a campfire. Others, like Sean and Kailani, do not fare so well. Their lack of warmth made them unendearing, and the "will they, won't they" theme running throughout the film was completely uninspiring. It's clear that Kailani was intended to be received as an independent, headstrong character, but she just came across as petulant and emotionally distant. Therefore, it begged disbelief when, halfway through the movie, she suddenly developed a heart and preached to Sean that having a dad who cares too much is better than one who doesn't care at all. Nowadays, highlighting how difficult it can be for a new partner to be accepted by their new partner's children, and how important familial relationships are, is an admirable moral to espouse. Too bad it was done so clumsily and required a fair amount of digging to uncover. After all, considering the amount of work involved, it shouldn't have been upstaged so easily by Johnson's popping pecs. Ultimately, Journey 2: The Mysterious Island has all the necessary ingredients for the recipe for a perfect kids film: bugs, colors, silliness, fast action. The odd moments to keep the adults entertained are far too few and not particularly good. Caine riding a giant bee is a highlight, though. Basically, it's a visually stunning throwaway. Number 3. As a follow-up to Journey to the Center of the Earth, Journey 2: The Mysterious Island takes another light-hearted stab at the Jules Verne catalogue, this time trading in the thrill-seeking Brendan Fraser for a lizard-pummeling Dwayne Johnson. Which one is better, you ask? I'll just let the bouncing berries do the talking. But strictly as a standalone movie, Journey 2 is definitely its own thing. No need to play catch up here. Nothing that a brisk few lines of exposition can't solve in the first several minutes. The story picks up years after Journey 1, and at this point, the young Sean Anderson, Josh Hutcherson, has slouched into the whole teen angst bit. Motorcycles, leather jackets, the usual shtick. When he finds a coded message from his grandfather Alexander, Michael Caine, Sean begrudgingly agrees to let his mom's boyfriend, Hank Johnson, tag along in the search for the mysterious island, presumably where Alexander is stationed. Along the way, the unlikely duo recruits Gabato Luis Guzmán and Kailani Vanessa Hudgens as guides to fly them to their destination. Once they arrive, stranded, and meet up with Alexander, Hank discovers that the island only has a few precious days left before the whole thing sinks below sea level. Johnson actually does a really good job with his part as Hank. Between his massive physique and charming grin, the guy's just rife with comedic potential. Hutcherson likewise plays well off of Johnson, and their blossoming dynamic is one of the standouts among the cornball cast of characters. Guzman and Caine are almost exclusively played for laughs, and Hudgens makes for unbeatable eye candy anyway. Speaking of which, I would highly recommend the IMAX 3D version of the film if you plan on seeing this in theaters. The CG elements, of which there are plenty, are hit or miss, but seeing the movie in 3D definitely helps to sell the coherence of the visuals. The core designs for the creatures and locales are solid, and for a movie trying to capture the whimsical nature of Burns' eccentric vision, the special effects certainly do the job. Of course, with the fairly merciful running time of 94 minutes. There's a lot of plot that gets glossed over in favor of animal chase scenes and goofball shenanigans. The entire story is predicated on gigantic leaps in logic. You'll nearly crap your pants at how quickly Sean and Hank solve Alexander's coded message at the beginning of the film. As it turns out, almost every character is a borderline prodigy when it comes to plate tectonics, animal behavior, and carbon dating. Ultimately, Journey 2 is a movie that can get away with seemingly baseless reasoning because it never takes itself too seriously. The movie does mostly cater to its youthful target demo. The dialogue oozes with PG cheese, but there are some good laughs in there for the older set too. Is the story more or less forgettable? Totally. But it's breezy, fun, adventure packed, and it delivers exactly what you'd expect. Plus, The Rock punches a giant lizard in the face, and he plays the ukulele. How can you say no to that? 2.5 out of 5 stars, 5/10 score.